Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining our panel discussion on Districts on the Move. We have our panelists are coming in at this time, and what we do want to do is just give a couple of seconds in order to make sure that everyone has had the chance that wants to join this particular room to enter, and then we'll be starting up. Within this particular panel discussion, we'll take some time to hear from a number of districts, many of them based here in the state of California, one from the state of Georgia that will be joining us as well. Within this conversation, you'll hear stances from district leaders who have taken on the heavy lifting of transitioning their districts into various types of ways of improving literacy for the students in their communities, as well as developing educators' capabilities to support those children. So with that being said, I'm going to quickly introduce myself, and then I'll pass it over to our panelists for introductions. And then after we go through that round of introductions, then we'll get into our panel questions for this morning / afternoon for some of you all. So my name is Robert Sheffield. I am president of CORE Learning. For many of you all that are in California, you know CORE as one of the organizations that has been supportive the work of the science of reading for almost 3 decades now. I have the honor of coming into this role after the great work of Linda Diamond and Bill Hoynick, leading this movement throughout the state of California and throughout the country. So it is a really good moment for us as an organization to be at a place now where the science of reading has been elevated to the level where it should be in terms of how educators are thinking about the development of literacy, skills for children, and the ways in which we should be designing our systems of instruction. In terms of the panelists that we have here today, I'd like to first open up the microphone to Grant Rivera and allow Grant to introduce himself, and then I'll move to our other panelists for today.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. It is an honor to be with you and everyone today. Thank you. I'm the district from Georgia, but my family's in California. Thanks for allowing me to be here with friends. Briefly about our district, I serve as a superintendent. We have just under 9,000 kids across 12 schools. We sit just north of Atlanta in what's considered Metro Atlanta. And our story around the science of reading really started 3 years ago. And I'm sure as many districts around the country, and certainly those in California, we had exceptionally high levels of students who were not reading on grade level. Pre-COVID, COVID only exacerbated that issue. And really for us as a district, it became a moral imperative to figure out what were we going to do differently. And we partnered with the Atlanta Speech School, which is our neighbor just a few miles here to the south here in Atlanta, and really made a commitment to learning from the pedagogy from them. And for us, it's been a 3-year journey where we focus on the people, not a program. And we focus on the pedagogy, and quite candidly, the results for us have been exceptional. And we can talk more about what some of those processes look like, but we're exceptionally proud here to say that we outpaced the state of Georgia by 5 times when we looked at the most recent state standardized test in the spring. So very diverse community. 39% of our students are Hispanic, very high immigrant and also homeless population, 65% free and reduced lunch. We're a beautiful microcosm of Metro Atlanta and many cities across the country. And our priority has been to really bring the science of reading and eliminate a lot of the noise. And we're honored to be a part of this conversation today. So thank you, Robert.
All right, thank you, Grant. Krista, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. I am Krista Thompson. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for the Lancaster School District. We are located in the northernmost part of LA County, above the mountains, not by the beach. We have a very diverse district of low socioeconomic, very diverse, 30% African American, 58% Hispanic. We have in our area, we have one of the highest populations of foster and homeless students that we serve, and we're proud to serve. In our district, we have just over 14,000 students in a PK through 8th grade district with 22 schools. And our literacy story has been ongoing pre-COVID in terms of we didn't know what to do until after COVID. We got selected to participate in a couple grants through the state, the ELSB grant and the CLSD grant, as a result of our low reading scores that have flatlined. Less than 24% of our students are reading at grade level. And so coming out of COVID and the selection to participate in those grants, we really took note of how to do literacy correctly, how to teach reading correctly. And we started with our 4 grant schools, and now we have scaled it up to all of our elementary schools and beyond. So we're at the beginning part of our journey. We're actually in the full year of implementation in year 2 of our full implementation for literacy this year.
Thank you so much, Krista. And Danae, please introduce yourself next and turn your camera on if you are here with us.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Danae Reynolds, Director of Literacy Instruction in Palo Alto Unified. We're really glad to be here. And Palo Alto Unified in the Bay Area, we are working in year 3 of our Every Student Reads initiative, focused on moving all students reading on or above grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And while many people wouldn't think of us as a district needing to have this as a focus, we realize that this is definitely an area for us, for students who have historically been underserved in our district. And this is a board goal, as well as a goal that our teachers and our principals are taking very seriously. And this is year 3 for us. And we're really proud of the results that we've been making with this being a focus for our district, and really excited to be on this panel to learn from my colleagues and to share some of the work that we've done. Thank you.
Thank you. And Anika, please introduce yourself next.
Yes, good morning, everyone. First of all, I just want to say how honored and excited I am to be a part of this amazing panel and to be here representing Berkeley Unified School District as a district that is on the move. I'm Unikia Ford-Morthel, and I'm the proud superintendent of Berkeley Unified School District, and we are located in Northern California. Berkeley, like many of the other districts that have just spoken, is a very diverse community, very proud of our diversity. We are diverse ethnically, linguistically, socioeconomic status, et cetera. And what we say in Berkeley, our mission is to enable and inspire our diverse student body to achieve academic excellence and make positive contributions to the world. And there have been many examples of us doing that. And we're also honest about the fact that for so many babies, consistently and persistently, we have failed to do that. And so we have called out our collective work to really focus on making sure that all of our students, as our mission says, really are able to achieve the academic excellence and demonstrate all of their brilliance and amazing. And we're starting that by focusing on literacy, on reading. I'll tell you more about how we're doing it with the questions that are to come. What I would say is that just like I heard Grant say, he said moral imperative, here in Berkeley Unified, this is not just another initiative. This truly is an imperative. We are tired. Our babies are tired. Our families are tired. And we know that we can do better. And we know that our students are inherently brilliant and amazing. Though this is my 2nd year in Berkeley Unified, this is not my, I'm not new to this work. This equity work has been very much my why, and has informed every role that I've had in public education, including reading specialist, including educator, teacher, and principal. And so I'm so happy to do this work here in Berkeley Unified in this new capacity, really thinking about how do we move this agenda from a systems perspective, and how do we really make sure that we're not applying a simple solution to a, quite frankly, complex and very persistent problem. And so excited to be here to share what we're doing here in Berkeley and learn from the colleagues on the panel as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Anika. And while you have the open mic, if you don't mind, can you talk to us a little bit about the initiatives that are taking place in Berkeley right now? And just take a few moments to also talk about the ways in which you're organizing the system to roll out those initiatives.
Yes. So let me just start by saying historically, Berkeley has been and is widely known for being a balanced literacy district. TCRWP, units of study, that's what we're known for. What we want to be known for is to be a district that is disrupting narrative, disrupting persistent trends in data, and really responding to our students. And so that's the shift that we're making as a district. We are moving away from a program or a set way of doing things, and really open to looking at data, making sure that we are science and research informed around our instruction with reading and literacy in general. The ways that we're doing that is actually by taking a multi-pronged approach. Again, I said earlier about not applying a simple solution to a complex problem. And so here in Berkeley, that approach looks like really making sure that our educators, our folks who are inside the classroom in day-to-day interacting with our babies are informed, have professional development, and really understand the science of reading, really understand how our babies become readers, how literacy instruction should look, and how it happens. And so that's a really key part of the work that we started last year that we're doing this year. is really building the capacity of our educators to do this work. We also are really looking more closely at making sure that we have a strong and really aligned MTSS structure so that we're identifying students who need extra support and making sure we have the extra support to give them, and making sure that support or that intervention is also research-based and aligned to best practices. The other component of the work that we're doing, so that part also includes a lot of focus on data. We're really shifting to be a data-informed culture here in Berkeley Unified. So we're no longer assuming what's working or waiting to the end of the year to find out who got it or who didn't get it, but really along the way, having very coherent and consistent ways that we look at data together as educators and then reflect on that data and respond to the data. The other part that I will say is that in addition to, I think Grant mentioned it, really thinking about practices and pedagogy, we're also looking at the resources and materials that are in our classrooms that our educators are using. So really making sure they understand reading acquisition and what it looks like so they can be critical consumers, as I heard someone say earlier, and making sure that the resources that are in their classroom actually support and align with what best practices say needs to happen in terms of literacy. So we're actually this year really outlining our timeline to do a curriculum adoption for literacy. We started last year with the curriculum audit, really understanding what's in our classroom, looking at our teaching practice and what is being done. And now we're moving to say now what we're going to do in response to that. So that's just in a nutshell what we're doing here in Berkeley. And I don't want to oversimplify that because it is a lot. The PD and the coaching piece, looking at the curricular materials and also that data-informed system and the MTSS. The last thing that I would say that is a big part of the work that we're doing here in Berkeley this year, in addition to what I just said, is to really think about the infrastructure. What happens oftentimes is that, all this great work happens, but it can't sustain. And our goal here in Berkeley is not just to have a meantime plan, but to have a long-term plan that sustains and exists outside of any one particular person or superintendent or board or principal, right? And so we're really thinking about how do we make sure that we have the systems in place to support this very robust and important work. Structures for our educators to collaborate and share best practices, align PD across all of our grade levels, share language and share vocabulary, opportunities in our calendar for us to stop and look at data and reflect on data and make those next instructional moves, and opportunities for us to share best practices. We want to make sure that we are not inadvertently getting in the way of this important work that we're trying to do. So we're actually approaching this again from all of those different aspects.
Thank you. Krista, would you mind telling us a little bit about what's going on in Lancaster?
I would love to. Thank you. Like I said earlier, we started with the grants, the Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant and the Early Literacy State Block Grant really pushed us down this road around structured literacy and the science of reading. And with both of those grants, the CLSD grant grabbed hold of 3 of our schools, and they implemented in those 3 schools the Getting Reading Right program through LACO, and shout out to LACO for leading us on this journey with those 3 schools. And then through the ELSB grant and CORE, which you're familiar with, both of those programs aligned with those 3 schools. And so we took the learning around the science of reading and structured literacy approach to scale up that work to our full district, to all 14 of our elementary schools. Beginning with a K-2 approach. So last year we started and we did a slow aggressive roll, if you will, in that we knew this can't wait. This is immediate. This needs to happen now. But we also have to go with the speed of what our teachers and our students can digest. And so with a planned professional development and training plan, we trained in the science of reading, structured literacy, following the models around CORE and Getting Reading Right. We have district leadership. Our instructional coach at the leadership at the district is an expert in literacy, and she's leading this work with our professional development for the rest of our schools outside of the grant work. So we started with training the teachers, and then we looked at curriculum and the instructional materials that are being used. And we really had to take, I really appreciate what Anikia had to say in terms of taking a look at what our current materials are doing and whether or not they're hindering or helping the literacy movement. And so we really had to look at what our current program was doing, and we decided there were some chunks of it that were not working. So we removed some pieces of that and replaced it with the phonemic awareness and phonics instruction that really was essential, that systematic, explicit, direct instruction. So we rolled that out in kind of a slow roll, and we said by the end of last year, all teachers will be doing this. And then in terms of sustaining that work as well, we are continuing. We get new teachers. I'm sure everyone is dealing with the teacher shortage and the new teachers teachers as they come. And so we are being very strategic in trying to ensure that the teachers that we get that are new are getting trained in the science of reading along with the curriculum materials that we're providing. And then the other piece of that is, and this is really kind of the impetus to monitoring how we're doing and making sure that we're doing the right things, is our assessment system. We didn't have a cohesive assessment system to measure how our babies were doing in literacy and reading. And so that was a big push for us to get a consistent assessment system that measured how students were doing with their foundational reading skills. So we've implemented that. And so it's been a tough role, but it's been really wonderful because training on the assessment system, the instructional materials, and the science of reading, that's a lot, but it's a moral imperative. So that's where we started, and there's a lot more to come and a lot more that we're doing, but I'll share later.
Thank you. Grant, please just share a little bit about what's going on in your community.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, and thank you again to my colleagues. There's some interesting themes that run through all of this. I want to frame something slightly different, and then I want to walk you through the alignment that we have in our district that parallels with my friends. In Marietta, we believe that we have to start earlier than pre-K and kindergarten. And truth be told, we believe that developing the reading brain starts with prenatal care. For us, we have tried to build an ecosystem from the birthing hospitals all the way through our elementary schools. So part of this discussion for us, while it's certainly around the pedagogy and the science of reading, it's also about how do we start early with every forward-facing adult serving a family. So we partner with the local hospitals. I mean, truth be told, I have an 8-year-old daughter. It wasn't too long ago that I had a 2-hour workshop on how to put in a car seat. I didn't have a 1-minute conversation about how to develop the reading brain while we were going through prenatal classes. So for us, it's about building this ecosystem, looking at not only what we can do with forward-facing adults that are serving families birth to age 3, but we are also partnering with every single pre-K program in our community, 27 of them, even if they're not, there's only one under the umbrella of the school district, but 27 because all those babies are eventually going to roll to kindergarten. And we understand the importance of kindergarten readiness and the importance, particularly in pre-K programs where they don't have the funding and the time to have these types of conversations. How can we leverage our resources to make sure that everybody in our Marietta city is eventually coming to our schools? Everybody in a pre-K program within the boundaries of our city have the right conversations around developing the reading brain. But shifting now to more of the traditional, at least in our case, elementary approach, I wanted to walk through just very quickly 6 themes that are consistent with everything else my friend said. 1, we have to set a vision where this is the most important work we do after student and staff safety. And unequivocally, we spent, our time, our budget is a moral document. And we tell people we will prioritize literacy in our moral document. So for us, it's about setting a very clear vision. Everybody knew what was important during COVID. They need to hear what's important post-COVID. And they need to know that literacy is our #1 priority after safety. Second theme, we talked about pedagogy. There were a lot of people in our district, and I'm sure our teacher profile looks a lot like yours. You have veteran teachers who had pedagogy from 20 years ago. You have teachers that just came out of college. They have different beliefs. Post-secondary programs actually struggle to find people who understand the science of reading because so many of the veteran tenured staff are looking at pedagogy from years ago. So for us, it was around an unwavering commitment to what we believe is the right work in classrooms. And for us, that aligned to the science of reading. It was a commitment not to a program, but to the people. And you've heard that over and over from my colleagues. The third idea for us was around resources. When we talked about focusing on literacy, everybody wanted to run out and buy a canned curriculum. And the truth be told, that was the biggest distraction. We had to wade around in the deep end for a while. So therefore our teachers didn't become dependent on a box because no box is going to teach a kid, a teacher is. So for us, after vision, after the pedagogy, it was around being committed to the right types of resources. We will go into year 4 next year in this work, and that will be the first year we have a core reading program. And trust me, that work that we're doing right now to vet that is incredibly difficult because that becomes a distraction to all the work we've done around people and pedagogy. Quickly, the other things, as my friend mentioned, Krista mentioned assessments. The 4th thing we had to focus on is getting our assessments aligned to the science of reading. That means we may need to ditch F&P, build some local formative and summative assessments to make sure they're aligned to what we're asking our teachers to do around instruction. Coaches, 5th area for us was around academic coaches, literacy coaches. We have pushed in coaches who go into buildings for 1 full week, twice a month. We assign 1 coach to 2 schools, and that person goes in and models and coaches and supports and looks at data. If teachers knew what to do, they would have done it a long time ago. By having a coach sitting next to them, we take the fear out of this transition for some, and that's been one of our greatest levers. And the last thing I just say is time. Our time is a reflection of what you value. And for us, we commit planning time, we commit leadership meeting times, all of that to this conversation, because as I said, after safety, our staff understands that it's the most important work we're doing.
Thank you so much, Grant. And Danae, please share a little bit about what's happening in Palo Alto.
Our work started actually before COVID with a dyslexia working group. That was a group of parents and educators working together to talk about dyslexia and what we were seeing with our students and the need to support kids with dyslexia or markers for dyslexia. That also included students who were striving readers. And then we went through COVID and came out of COVID realizing that not only did we need to continue to address dyslexia and striving readers, but we needed to really look more deeply at our students who had historically been underserved in our district in terms of their reading development and growth. And that's how my position as the Director of Literacy Instruction was born. And so we looked at moving into the Orton Gillingham program, and we started by having all of our kindergarten through third grade teachers trained in OG in fall of 2021. And all teachers were trained that summer and then into the fall if they did not attend over the summer. So this is now our third year with OG. And then we just had all of our fourth and fifth grade teachers trained with the morphology. We also had a new ELA adoption. And so this is our second year with a new ELA curriculum that we needed to shift to make sure that we had more structured literacy happening in our classrooms. We also added a phonemic awareness curriculum because that was a part that was missing when we thought about in our foundational skills aspect in terms of teaching reading. So thinking about Scarborough's rope, we knew that we needed to shore up the bottom part as well as adding the top, right? We knew we were really focused on comprehension, and then there were aspects of comprehension that we still needed to work on. So we feel like we're getting there. And then we also knew that we needed to support our elementary principals with understanding what to look for. So we have an elementary principal collaborative. This is year 3 of that collaborative where we meet monthly and we visit different elementary sites where you actually go into classrooms and calibrate around instruction. And we visit classrooms, we're observing teachers, we come back and we have conversations. And it's supporting our elementary principals with their walkthroughs and giving feedback to teachers about their instructional practice to really help our elementary principals know what they're looking for when they're looking at high quality teaching and learning when it comes to reading instruction, and to really support what we want to see happening in our classrooms as well. And the professional learning is so important for our teachers. So in addition to summer professional learning, ongoing professional learning during the school year with trainers, we also have Wednesday workshops. The first Wednesday of every month is open. We've asked principals to leave that Wednesday open for teachers to attend workshops that are voluntary, 1-hour workshops, sometimes 90 minutes if we can get them. Sometimes they're in person, sometimes they're live virtual like this, which have been great, well attended. And then sometimes we'll also have other workshops throughout the school year that teachers can attend. So just continuing with ongoing, whether it's tied to the curriculum or agnostic workshops that are about how the brain learns to read, about structured literacy to help continue to develop teachers' understanding and to shift from teachers like me who were taught how to teach children to read in the 90s, right? Because there is a shift, as Grant said, with our teaching force, right? People who had Wright Group books and Rigby books and were reading recovery trained, as I was, right? We're shifting how we teach reading and how we think about it. Our elementary principals also had a book study with Shifting the Balance our first year to help the elementary principals get a sense of where the shift was coming and to understand what they had to help some of their more experienced teachers understand and where that cognitive dissonance was going to come from. And for some of those principals who themselves had learned to teach reading in that same way, and what they were going to have to understand was going to be different as well. And then also with assessment, we've shifted and moved away from the benchmark assessment system, Fountas and Pinnell, to iReady, and having more diagnostic assessment and using that also for our universal screener. We moved away from the Shaywitz screener, and then working with our reading specialists and our librarians around really trying to hone what the reading specialist work looks like and who the students are that they're working with and why they're working with those students, and really trying to make sure that the work that they're doing actually matches the skills that the students need, and that the tier 1 is actually happening in classrooms, and that the double dose is happening. So it's not just the reading specialist providing tier 1, but tier 1 is in the classroom, and then there's really a double dose with the reading specialist. And then our librarians really providing books when the students come into library that are reflection of the children in our schools, and that there is a mirror and a window for our students. And so that the books that they see either are about a student that they may say, hey, this is something that this is someone that I don't know, but I'm going to read this book and wow, I have something in common, right? And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to have some conversations with my teacher or my family. And so one of the questions that we've been having is, well, maybe we've got a reading difference here because our kids aren't seeing books that are interesting to them or reflective of who they are, or maybe they're having an experience in our schools that isn't making them feel safe and welcome. And perhaps we can utilize other adults in our schools, on our campuses, to help broach some of those subjects. So bringing in other trusted adults within our campuses, such as our librarians, to have those conversations with students. So really utilizing lots of people on our campuses to address this work, not just classroom teachers, not just principals, but really talking with all stakeholders around this literacy initiative.
Robert, I know we have to get on to the other questions, but just wanted to name one. First of all, I just appreciate my colleagues for saying all the things that we didn't say, everything that you all talked about, making sure we have data-informed systems, the assessments, the Arthur Gillingham's trainings, et cetera. We're doing that in Berkeley. What I haven't heard that I think that we are all likely doing as well, that I think is important to speak to, is I'm going to assume that there is in these other districts, just like in Berkeley, and the other systems that I've been in, some patterns in terms of these achievement and opportunity gaps, right? And so just want to name that what we're also doing in Berkeley is really looking at and having conversations about belief systems and mindsets, right? We can't pretend like if I just have you go to the core training, because we're doing that and it's great. And if I just get you OG trained, then it all, right? There are some really deep entrenched belief systems and mindsets that we have to address in our system with our educators, with our families, with our community members that are playing out in the classroom, and that also are informing the results that we see year after year persistently. So in Berkeley, we have been having book clubs around anti-racism, because it's our African Americans, our Latinx students, our English learners, specifically our Spanish-speaking English learners in Berkeley, who consistently, right, are the lower part of of those data sets. And so just wanted to name that we have to make sure that we're also having that conversation, because it's real. And that's another conversation that Berkeley Unified is having. It's not just the PD, it's those critical conversations. It's those step back and reflect. It's how do I see that baby? Do I believe as the practitioner that every child in my classroom can learn? That's the first question. And do I feel like I have what it takes to make sure that they learn? So that's that efficacy piece as well. So just wanted to name that, because I don't think anyone said it, but I think we're all trying to address that very same thing.
Thank you.
think
And
that's
I do.
a
Oh,
really
go ahead,
important
Meg.
thing to name. And tied to that, none of this work would have been happening here in Palo Alto had we not had our Assistant Superintendent of Equity and Student Affairs in the role that she's in for the number of years that she's been doing that work, right? So that seeded all of this, which allowed our board to start to talk about the underserved groups of students in our district and actually call out the data that we have, right? Because for us, our student population is so small, those children folded into our overall population, you wouldn't notice, you wouldn't know unless you pulled them out and called them out. And because she's in that role, they're asking those questions, which is why we have this initiative, right? And so then it made it much easier for us to have the initiative and have teachers actually say, yeah, this is important. We actually should be doing this work, and we should be focusing on Black students, Latino students, Pacific Islander students in particular, and actually having data-driven conversations about these students in particular in a way that there wasn't pushback that we would have seen 10 years ago. Absolutely.
Thank you. One wondering that I have as we're talking about specific groups of students is, how are you all also centering the needs of students with dyslexia?
Huge, huge. For us in Palo Alto, we are, of course, using Heggerty for our phonemic awareness and OG for phonics. And that is happening now. OG is happening K-5. Heggerty is happening TK through 2nd grade, starting this year. So that we're looking forward to seeing what the data looks like to support students with dyslexia because of that shift. And we also had all of our reading specialists and ed specialists and our EL specialists trained along with all classroom teachers. So we're hoping to see some shifts. We're also this year really looking at how we're serving our students with disabilities. So if our students with disabilities have an ed specialist time, are they also receiving time with our reading specialist? And what does that look like? Push in the classroom support so that kids are getting a double or a triple dose. Also, what does it look like in terms of that tier 1 instruction? And then really supporting teachers with understanding all the different comorbidities that go with dyslexia, ADHD, anxiety, executive functioning, all of those parts that can, not always, but may go with dyslexia to help support students so that teachers have a better understanding. And then we also have this year, we actually just literally yesterday had our librarians trained by 2 of our assistive technology teachers in Snap and Read and Co-Writer, which has been pushed out onto all of our Chromebooks so that all students have access to those 2 assistive tools on the Chromebook. And then they are going to train all of the children when they come into library how to use those assistive tools so that any child who has those needs that are written in on their IEP or 504 plan, when the teacher says, okay, you can use this tool, now it's not something that a child feels like they are separate or called out for having to use text to speech when they're doing their writing assignment, because it's something everyone will understand how to use and can try out. So it's just something that everyone can use. It's not, they won't feel separate, they won't feel different. So we're really excited that that tool is something that every child has access to now. Children will try it out. Not all kids will use it, and not all kids need it, but the children that do will now be able to use it without any type of stigma. So we're really excited about that. And then we also have Learning Ally available to students that need it, especially students with dyslexia. That's available on all of our Chromebooks as well for students on their Clever account. And then we have we have Lexia as well for students with dyslexia as a support. So a few things that we're doing to support students with dyslexia in Palo Alto.
So Berkeley Unified is also using Heggerty. I would say, and just in all transparency, we're not there where I can say that it's system-wide and everyone's, but I will say a little bit of context for Berkeley is that in 2017, a group of students and parents filed a federal lawsuit against our district. And that lawsuit really asserted that our policies and our practices discriminated against students and with a really focus on students that had reading disorders, known or suspected, in particular students with dyslexia. And from that lawsuit and through negotiations with the various parties, there is a literacy action plan or literacy improvement plan that Berkeley Unified has to really inform a lot of our work and focus on literacy. And I say that just to say that we are moving with a focus on literacy, but we also have a specific focus for attending to the needs of babies who learn differently, and then specifically because of this lawsuit and informed by this lawsuit, a focus on our students with dyslexia. So Heggerty, yes, and a part of our plan, our literacy action plan, is that we have a literacy action team. And that team is comprised of general educators, as well as educators in the special education part of our school districts, as well as interventionists, as well as after school folks, as well as central office teams. And so these conversations around what does dyslexia look like and how do we respond? And then also back to what Danae said in terms of tier 1, we're having them all together so we have the same understanding. When we talk about Heggerty, we talk about some of our reading interventions and our responses to our students who have various learning needs, or to our students who have not yet met the standards. We're also really thoughtful to track and monitor data just to get it what Danae talked about, what is working and what is not working, so that we can make sure the things that we're doing are actually the things that are making the difference. So I just wanted to add that piece as well.
Thank you. And we're going to transition to another question. And I want to give a little context on this one because we're going to go off script a little bit. We do recognize that there are students that are in our middle and high schools that are also challenged in terms of their own literacy development. Many of them may not have had strong foundations in elementary school, and many of those students also were adversely impacted by COVID. So how are you all thinking about addressing the needs of adolescent children and students as you all are rolling out these literacy plans in your systems?
Yeah, Robert, I'll weigh in. Oh, go ahead, Krista.
No, go Grant.
And I think that's the interesting part. As we have made this a priority, birth through age 8, our middle and high school educators are like, well, hey, wait a minute. Like, what about our kids who fell through the gaps, who are new to the country? Truth be told, in 10th grade here in Marietta, if we look at the state standardized test, 40% of our 10th graders aren't reading on grade level. And those are kids who've simply either fallen through the cracks or intentionally been socially promoted. So for us, it's interesting because we're trying to really dissect the data, going back to something Anikia said earlier, like looking at the data. If we have kids who are sitting in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade with developmentally who are at the kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade level, truth be told, some of the practices we're doing in our elementary grades, we need to be replicating in small group settings and otherwise in our middle grades. However, honestly, the principles that apply around intensive, like explicit, systematic, and direct reading instruction apply 6-12 as much as they apply K-5. So for us, it's looking at those same types of principles I talked about earlier. We are looking at pushing more reading specialists into our middle and high school. Truth be told, a lot of times middle and high school teachers think they're content experts. So we need to get people in there who actually are not so much focused on, math and science and social studies, but focused on how to help kids read. I think the other thing for us that's critically important, and I'll say this unapologetically, I candidly don't care about some of the other elective classes. I need kids who are not reading on grade level in middle school and high school focused on literacy. When we fix that, everything else will come. So we have pulled kids out of PE, out of non-essential electives. The idea is, how do we get the right adults in front of them? How do we manipulate their schedule on a daily basis? And we help these kids get to a place where they too are confident walking in our schools. Because let's be honest, the feeling of being 16 and illiterate, walking in and out of a public high school today, we needed to fix that yesterday as we go back to that moral imperative conversation.
Thank you, Grant. You said a lot of what I wanted to say. And I'm going to start at our K2 level to give context for what we're doing in our middle school. So we're a K8, and just to reiterate, Danae and Anikia, we are using Heggerty as well. We're also using SIPS, and then DIBELS is our assessment in K2, and we've expanded to 3rd grade in our Tier 1 instruction. That's all Tier 1. But at the same time that we planned that for our Tier 1 core instruction, K2, K3, we recognize we can't ignore 4th through 8th grade. There's some significant gaps and equity gaps happening there as well. And so we took that same approach, Grant, where and I'm a high school English teacher, and I was a high school English intervention teacher, and I approached intervention with the kiddos that were 13 and above as it was all a comprehension issue, and that is not the case. We actually dug in last spring and did some hardcore assessments with our kiddos in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to determine what is their level of literacy need, and then place them in intervention classes that would address that specifically. So we actually this year started in our middle schools with teaching SIPS Plus to those kiddos that need those foundational reading skills to do exactly what Grant said, to say we've got to get them on the road to literacy or nothing else matters.
Thank you. We've got about 5 minutes left in our panel. I would like for each one of you all to get a closing comment. And particularly as you frame this closing comment, what one lesson from your own journey do you believe is most important for our audience to keep in mind as they are trying to improve the literacy systems within their communities?
Robert, can I just share a little bit about what we're doing about secondary
Please. Yes.
really quickly? We are using Reading Apprenticeship, which has been fantastic for our content teachers, actually, to help them be metacognitive about how they think about reading in the content area. We've also added in some team teaching, which has also been very supportive of our, striving readers within the content areas at the secondary level. We've been really cognizant about our striving readers who actually come to secondary school for their electives. And so as much as I actually want a reading class for them as an elementary person, my secondary colleagues are like, no, you can't do that. They need to have that elective. So we are doing team teaching for them. At the high school, we actually have added a dual enrollment course with Foothill College, which will be a reading course for our students. So they will get to keep their elective. They will get a college credit class and reading. So we're very excited about that as well. So I just wanted to name a few things that we're trying. And we're actually gave iReady K-12. So our assistant superintendent of secondary actually can speak to the reading levels of all of our secondary students, which we've never been able to do before. So we're trying out some new things at the secondary level, and which has been pretty powerful.
Thank you.
I'm kind of cheating, Robert, because I also am distracted by the chat, and just someone said something about, how are we making sure that these practices are actually happening in the classroom and mentoring teachers. And so I must speak on behalf of all of us, you all, that it's not just PD. PD is not just the sit-in sessions. It's PD and coaching. And so in Berkeley, we do have literacy coaches at all of our sites that support the instruction, that is making sure to go in and plan lessons together, sometimes co-teach lessons, observe lessons, and give that feedback. We're making sure that our site leaders are also getting this training to understand what good reading instruction looks like. What are those instructional moves they should be looking for? How to look at and how to lead data-informed conversations, and again, give feedback to teachers. We're hoping in the years to come that we would get to the point where we could, once we have a shared language and vocabulary and understanding of what good reading instruction looks like, to do some peer observations. So just wanted to add that is also a part of that infrastructure that I spoke about earlier. It's not just PD one and done. It's ongoing, it's consistent, and it has that coaching and feedback observation loop that's embedded in it as well. In terms of your question, though, Robert, because you did have a specific question around, what was the question, Robert?
We're looking for that one coaching point that you would offer the audience as they're working to improve their systems.
Yeah, I think so much has been said today. I think what I would say is, we all know that we're trying to tackle this issue around reading, right? But I think that what you want to do when you're in a school district or in a school is really learn and understand what that issue is and why that issue is in your district and in your context. So it's not this is what I did in this other district, I'm gonna come and do it here. Really take the time to study and understand what's happening and what's not happening. Back mindsets, belief system again. Is it curriculum? Is that they're not looking at data? To really understand the issue there before you go for this is the fix. So that's one thing that I would say. Can I get one more, Robert? Okay, I'm gonna take it. The other thing that I would say is really, we are educators, right? So always be in that learning stance and really take the time to learn from other districts that are also doing this work, and not just look at the final product. Not just look at Palo Alto went up 4% and that was their goal, but talk to Palo Alto and find out what did it take to get there? Because there's always that backstory of all those years of building up to it before the results actually hit, right? So we know that the lagging indicator is the impact, right? But the leading indicator are those actions and those behaviors. And so taking the time to actually learn those actions and behaviors, those pitfalls and those learnings as you're implementing and doing in your district, in that context, I think is also really important. I'm not gonna say anything else.
All right, we're right at 11 o'clock, and I need to honor the prompting from our producers. It is time for us to transition. So first, I'd just like to say thank you for each one of you for your contributions that you've made to our panel discussion today. thank you as a parent, as a person that's working in the community for the work that you all are doing within your local communities. And I hope the best for you in terms of all the work that you're doing within your systems. And at this point in time, I'm going to pass it back over to our host, and they will take our discussion forward from here. Thank you all.